Hi, this is Ben Osborne with Thermo Fisher Scientific. In this video, I want to show you the basic steps in setting up a very simple peptide ID run in Proteome Discoverer 2.0. If you're familiar with the earlier iterations of Proteome Discoverer, this front page is going to look pretty new to you. But this isn't something to be intimidating. There's a lot of extra power here in 2.0, but a lot of these features are things that we don't actually have to use if we just want a simple peptide ID report. We don't want to change anything, but we have a lot more power that we can go after here. But we want to do the simplest possible search. What we're going to do is just set up a new study or analysis, and we want to start off by giving that study a name. Say Now, you want to give your study a root directory. Now here we can say where our raw files are and everything can reference to that, and we can keep our raw files together with our process data. And here I'm going to go into the data I'm currently processing and create a new file for Aspergillus, and I will select this folder. For processing workflows, I can go ahead and browse to pull one in, or I can go for any of these generic created methods that have a really good description of what they're for. So looking here, so I've got Bionic and Preview in here, but we're just going to go for a basic sequest with percolator workflow, and we can go for the fusion or for the LTQ Orbitraps. And in this case, this data comes from an Orbitrap Valus, so I'm going to pull that here. And the consensus workflow, that's a new step in Proteome Discoverer 2.0, and I'll walk you through that. But best place to start is probably just with a nice, simple, basic consensus report, and then we can go from there. In this case, I don't have any quant, and I'll show you that in later videos. But yeah, this is how we would set up this side. And now we want to add files or add fractions. Now, as long as we're doing a very simple study from one individual sample, it really doesn't matter too much whether you add files or add fractions. But if there's a chance that you're going to compare fractions of this sample to another sample later, you might want to go ahead and say that these are all fractions. So I'm going to go ahead and add fractions here. And mine are in my downloads box. And I'll just go ahead and grab a couple of these here. So I have a set of 4 files that are fractions, and I hit OK. So the next thing that'll happen, it pulls everything in. So it'll pull my raw files in, and I will get this nice study page. Now, again, I'm not going to use any quant here, but here's where I could go ahead and select some more of that. I could put in some extra information in my descriptions. Here, the first thing I want to look at is the processing steps. And if you're familiar with older versions of PD, this is where things will start to look familiar. So if I go to processing steps, I want to show the workflows. What I do is just hit this magnifying glass, and it'll pull in the window that we're used to seeing. Right, so this is our most basic possible workflow for processing, where we start with spectrum files. We select our minimum cutoff filters for what is a good spectrum. Here's our search engine. We've sequest. Again, we can pull in any of these that we wanted to use. Mascot, Bionic, MS Amanda. And then at the end, we need some sort of false discovery rate calculation. The fixed value PSM validator will just refer back to the sequest cross-core factors or X-cores that you set in the administration tab. But yeah, for now, this is just showing you how to set up a general workflow. But in general, what I would want to see here is percolator. Right? So again, generic workflow. But what we need to do is bring in our database. In this case, I'll just pull in whatever. And then we set our settings. I know this is Valus data, so 10 ppm, 0.6 Daltons would be just fine. We put in the modifications that we want. You'll see that there are a whole slew of new modifications where we can simply select modifications on the protein terminus. But these are things we'll talk about in later and in more advanced videos. But here, this is our basic workflow. So we are taking raw files, selecting the good spectrum, and running those through sequest and validating with Percolator. These are the normal steps that we're used to seeing, and this will generate an MSF file, which is essentially an SQLite database file, but that was the output file in Proteome Discoverer 1.3 and 1.4, the MSF file. Now, we want to take the MSF files a step further, and this we would do in our consensus steps. So if we go into the consensus workflow, we set up, this is the basic workflow. It's already set up and established for you from that basic consensus. In this case, we start with the MSF files we group those, starting at the PSM level. So we group those so we're not looking at redundant PSMs. We put those all together. This is something that was done in the background in older versions of PD. But here we're doing this at a point where we can have some control over the probabilities and our display options. Then we move from the PSM grouper into the peptides. And this is where we'll put our cutoffs for the peptide validation. Then we'll move into our peptide and protein filters. We'll go ahead and score our proteins, and then we'll group them. Right, so this gives us control. A lot of these steps were happening in Proteome Discoverer 1.4 in the background, but now we have the ability to control those, and we have other features that we can go ahead and pull in here. But these will be more of the focus of later videos, but I just want to show you this is the simplest possible workflow we can set up, where we just go straight through from a raw file to a final grouped protein list and consensus report. And yeah, this is how it would work. So that's all for now.